My name is Logan Wolf, and you are listening to Everything I Did Wrong as a Church Planter, a million-part series.
What did they buy?
And it didn't take me that long to figure it out either. And I say figure out that I did not know what I was doing.
That was one of the mistakes I made. And then the second one was...
That was the dumbest thing I think I could have done.
If you're going into church planning for anything other than a kingdom mindset, then you're really going to be in a mess.
I didn't know what I was doing,
But there were some things that we did wrong.
It was fear of failure.
I'm like, well, this doesn't work.
Part of it was I cannot do this at a sustainable rate.
Dumb. Wow, super stupid.
All right, I am joined today by my friend Dave Elshaug, and he is a brother laboring right here in Utah. And Dave, I was trying to think, you and I met years ago, like on a one-off kind of meeting, but more recently now we've been connecting through Loving Utah, which you're the director of, and some of these training events. We get to connect with other brothers and sisters. But do you remember what year it was? Like, it's been a long time ago that we met in like a coffee shop or something.
I feel like it was 9 or 10 years ago. I had heard the legend of Logan Wolf, this guy who came from North Carolina, moved out, trekked out here, pulling a hand cart all the way out to Utah, something like that, and was going to plant a church in Provo, Utah. And
I thought I was the answer.
Yeah, I remember that guy, and we did meet, and then I think we connected a few times, but it wasn't until probably about 4 or 5 years ago that we really kind of started a partnership of just gathering pastors and leaders and getting them in the room together and training lay people and how to carry out the Great Commission. And it's been fun. We've done a trip to Boise together and done some stuff around Salt Lake. So
I love it, man. It has been fun. And I love your heart. And that's why I wanted to have Dave on. Dave is a heart for the Great Commission, especially a heart for Utah, which is my heart as well. But he also has a church planting story. And I think you guys are going to enjoy hearing this because there's a lot to be learned here. And so, Dave, I appreciate your willingness to share your mistakes and the shortcomings so maybe just by way of introduction, kind of give us a little bit of your background. You're not from Utah, like myself.
Not from Utah.
Kind of give us a little bit of that story and jump into maybe your ministry experience, because I think that's going to tee up what we want to press into.
Sure. Well, just real quickly, I grew up in the 70s and 80s, so I'm a Gen Xer, and I grew up in a small town called Fergus Falls, Minnesota. My parents got saved just before I was born, and so and I felt this call to ministry when I went on a missions trip when I was 15. So
And where did you go?
I went to Panama.
How was that?
And that was awesome. It was really cool. And I was 15 years old and just feeling this call to ministry while I'm on there. So I set my goals to go to Bible college, which I did, and went to North Central Bible College, which is North Central University now in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and met my wife there, and from there launched into ministry. Now, I grew up in a really small church. Like, it had gone through a church split when I was in 3rd grade, and it never really recovered.
You were there for that?
Yeah, when I was in 3rd grade, my church split, and it was like an 80-20 split, and 80% left. And so I grew up, our church was pretty small, and but I always was inspired by the missionaries that came. That was, missionaries would come visit our church, and they would talk about, we go to these strange lands and these strange places with these strange people, and we're seeing them come to Jesus, and some of them have never heard about Jesus before. And that kind of stirred in my heart, a passion for ministry. And then, the topic of today is my past success didn't equal my future success. I just want to put that up front. I'm not saying I'm the most successful person. I'm saying some of this stuff humbly, but I had a track record of success of growing ministries.
Yeah.
And so after Bible college, went to a small town in Missouri called Maryville, Missouri. And we were at a church called Community of Faith. And it was, again, a small church. It was bigger than what I grew up in. It was about 150 people in a small town of about 10,000 people.
Okay.
And so I found this passion for children's ministry, and I did a lot of things. I was the associate pastor, so I did everything. Church. My pastor told me my job description was putty. I just fill in all the cracks.
That's not a good job description.
I know, but that's what he told me.
That's hilarious.
He was a real uplifting kind of guy.
There you go.
He had the gift of encouragement.
You're putty.
And when I was there, with the church of 150, we probably had about 20 or so kids. But
Okay.
I was able to grow that children's ministry and the youth ministry, and ended up with a VBS of 100 kids showing up for VBS, which to me was like, I didn't think I'd ever see that in ministry. So,
Yeah.
I mean, to me, that was a huge success.
Were you
And,
doing any children's ministry in your home church or during Bible college, or is this kind of your first?
During Bible college, I got exposed to it.
Okay.
We were volunteering at a church, and this guy had a huge puppet ministry. Puppets were getting saved left and right.
Dude, I know. I've seen puppet ministry.
Yeah, you see puppet.
I've seen puppet.
And I witnessed it being a really huge outreach tool to the community. That's what I saw when I was in Bible college, and then just having the opportunity to do it when I was in Missouri. Again, I saw it as a Great Commission tool that we could get these kids to come and have some fun, share about Jesus, and see their families' lives change. And we saw that every time we would do one of these events.
That's cool, man.
So
Did you when you were doing puppet? Because I know what people are wondering. Like, were you doing the voices?
Yeah, I have done voices.
You have. I don't wondered if the puppets all sounded like Dave Elshaug, or if they all had they all had unique voices.
Yeah, I can't really conjure up any of my voices, if that's what you're saying.
Fine. You're fine.
I could do the rest of the story in the voice of. No, not really.
No, I just keep going. So
All
you're
right.
you're in Missouri. It's
Missouri.
growing.
It's growing.
This is over a short time too, right? This is
over 3 years.
Yeah, this isn't a
over
long
3 years.
stint.
This isn't a long time.
Okay.
It was over 3 years. We didn't really love Missouri. Sorry if anyone out there in Missouri.
Wow, that's really
love
just
your
coming
state,
out
but
there.
it was really kind of a culture shock from being up from north, and it was just it wasn't, we weren't loving it. And so I pursued looking outside and seeing if there's any other opportunities to do children's ministry. That's kind of what I was looking for. And I ended up at a church called Woodlawn Church in Royal Oak, Michigan, which is a suburb of Detroit.
Okay.
And again, this was a larger church than I'd ever been in. It was a church of 500. And so it was substantially bigger than anything I'd have ever been a part of.
Right.
And had about 60 kids. And my primary job was to do children's church for those 60 kids.
So you came there specifically you weren't putty at that point. You were the youth guy.
Right. I was no longer putty.
Okay.
Which was kind of nice. I was able to do just birth through 6th grade.
Okay. Birth through 6th grade.
From there, we started a VBS tradition there, and first time had a couple hundred kids, which was huge. Like now I'm like, wow, I thought 100 was my max. Now we have a couple hundred kids. And then we grew that every year until our final year that I was there was 1,000 kids that came to our VBS. And
That's
that was
crazy.
just unbelievable. It was so
Twice
much
the size
fun.
of the church. Yeah, that's crazy.
we were just really known in the community. We had, we just did a lot of outreach into the community, inviting kids in, and that led to that. So we were running about 350 kids on a Sunday morning in our kids' church, and then we were doing 1,000 VBS. So I had this, and we watched the church grow from 500 to about 900 average weekend attendance.
Amen.
And that majority of that growth was the children's ministry that I was overseeing. And so after that, in 2003, I started a time of prayer and fasting. And it was something I had actually learned at our church in Michigan, at Woodlawn Church. We had done at least 3 or 4 different fasts during my time there. I was there for 7 years, and we were doing a fast in 2003, and I just felt like I needed to just go full water fast for 14 days, which I did. And
had you ever done anything like that before?
I actually had done 21 days at a previous year.
Okay.
And so it's been a long time since I've done that long of a fast, but
yeah.
This one, I was asking God, what's next at our church? Because I kind of felt like I had outgrown children's ministry, and I was now doing some executive pastor work in our church, and I was doing leadership development in our church.
Okay.
And we really loved our church, and I just felt like there was something, God had something different for me.
But
I was praying, and
this isn't born out of a discontent or
nope.
Things are going really well.
Things are going really well, and I'm thinking, wow, what's the next step for me at my church? You know, I was discontent in knowing that there was something else for me, but my whole focus was in Detroit at that church.
Okay.
When I got to the point of my fast, about 2 weeks in, woke up 3 o'clock in the morning, went on a jog. It was November, so it was cold in Detroit. I remember that. Went on a jog, and I was just praying, and I had gone 14 days, no answers, nothing, just total silence, you know, and just I was thinking God was going to give me an answer, and it was on that jog that he gave me an answer, and the words I heard him speak to my heart was, "You don't belong here." And I was like, what does that mean? I don't belong here? Of course I belong here. This is my family. This is my team, my home. You know, you don't belong here. And then I also heard the words church planting, which totally freaked me out. Because back this would have been in the late 90s.
Right.
It was still, church planting was still it was in its kind of revival of restarting. There's all these new ideas to do church plants. And so my story is like 20 years old, that I from when I planted my church. But yeah, there was just a whole lot of like church growth stuff going on, this new excitement for church planting happening, but nobody really seemed to know what to do.
So you weren't connecting with or had a bunch of interactions with other church planters coming through? No. Okay. Nothing like that. So how to connect this for me? Because you went on the mission trip, you're stirred.
Yep.
15 years old, you get in ministry. So at this point, when you're thinking, when God's doing this through this fast, is your mind going back to that time when you were 15, anything he did there? Or was that more catalytic at that one point? And like, is there any connection there?
Yeah, I would think that call when I was 15 was really something I always look back on as kind of a remembrance of God saying, I want you to go into full-time ministry.
Yeah.
And so I even look back to that today and think about, that's where it all started for me.
Amen.
At least the thought in my mind and in my heart that this is what I would be doing. Because I wanted to be an architect, man. I wanted to design buildings.
Bro,
So,
I don't know if we've talked about this.
yeah,
That's what I wanted to do.
really?
And I went and did. Now, when I went to high school, they had just like AutoCAD was just coming out. I did all the hand drafting and all learned
Yeah,
how to do all that. Yeah, that's what I
I
wanted
love
to do.
that.
I know, man. I did
I
too.
love drafting on the draft paper, and you got the
Yes,
angles, and you got the
dude,
perspective, and
I love it.
I love it. So I wanted to be an architect, and so um, God kind of changed my mind before going off to college
Okay.
and that. So
So you coming
uh,
out of this 2 weeks fasting?
yeah,
It sounds like it's a rhythm, which is I love that the church had
yeah,
corporately. They'd done some fast, and then you're just
yep,
doing it here on your own.
yep.
Um, you hear the Spirit say church planting, and so that's the moment you're like, okay, I'm going to pursue. Like, what was did you say, okay, I'm going to pursue this then, or
Yeah.
did you
So
run from it?
I started buying books, like church planting books, church growth books.
Okay.
Um, I'm like, I got to learn what
What
is
is
this?
church planting?
What what is church planting? And it was, um,
Well, let me pause here then before we keep rolling through
yeah,
this, because we talked in a number of episodes about books. There's so much written on the topic. Some good, some bad, some
yeah,
redundant, some outlandish,
yeah,
some super practical, some more philosophical. But what were you? So again, your story you just said 20 years ago.
yeah.
Um, so what were you reading then? What was helpful to you? What wasn't
Well,
helpful?
I read a lot of books, but there was one that really just stuck with me. In fact, I just handed it off to our brother, Derek Murphy. I
Oh,
handed
nice.
him the copy that I got when I was church planter.
Oh,
It's
wow.
called, because there's not very many of them around, but I did look on Amazon, and you can get it on Amazon. And it's Starting a New Church by Ralph Moore. And
Church by Ralph Moore. I wonder if I read
and
that.
if you look at it, the cover has a red Volkswagen filled with a bunch of people. It's called
Okay.
Starting a New Church. And what I loved about that book was it was a way more unconventional than kind of a checklist church plant.
Yeah.
It was, if I can remember, it's been a long time since I read it, but the things that impressed me about it was look for a place where there is no gospel,
Hmm.
find a leader, start a church. And
Come on, man.
and he uses the term church starter instead of church planter. I'd recommend this book to anyone just to have a different perspective on church planting. He would say a church starter is somebody who can gather people around the gospel and doesn't necessarily have to be a pastor, doesn't
Right.
necessarily have to be the
No, I agree.
planter, quote unquote. Because, when we talk about church planting a lot, it's, the professional seminary graduate,
Yeah.
who goes out and plants a church.
Is that similar to, because I know Tony Webb's stuff about finding
Yeah.
gatherers? Is it that kind of
Uh, it's similar, but not the same.
not the same? Okay.
The Tony Webb stuff is really good too. Um, Gather, shepherd, elder
Yeah, that's what I couldn't
concept.
think.
But the Ralph Moore, it was more like I remember one of the stories of a high school teacher who was coming to their church, and this high school teacher realized that there was not any churches around his high school, um, and almost none of his students went to a church anywhere. So he started a church in his high school. He's
Awesome.
like, "Do you think I could start a church?" Yeah. And and so there's they've Exponential Conference did a study of Ralph Moore's church, and they were located in Hawaii. It's called Hope Chapel, and they found, I believe the number was over 30,000 churches across the world that were connected to Ralph Moore's church, from people who were sent to start a
Right.
new church. and they found one on every single continent, including Antarctica. They found at a research station a church that had its roots back to Hawaii. And so I love anything Ralph Moore writes. I love anything he writes, but starting a new church, if I was a church planter or I was thinking about church planting, starting a new church, I would definitely read that book.
We'll link to that in the show notes so people find it. But you said you found it on Amazon, so it's still, you can snag a copy.
I did. I looked last night. It was on Amazon, so you can still get it. The other book that I recommend, and I think he just redid it, was John Maxwell's 21 Laws of Leadership.
Oh yeah.
And again, anything John Maxwell, but 21 Laws of Leadership has just really shaped me as a leader. And
because I believe you were doing that content, using that previously, right? Before church planting. Yeah. So doesn't that
I was using that, at my Michigan church. So
nice.
Which we can kind of go to that and talk about that, because as I was thinking about what we're going to talk about today, I found 7 things that really are ingredients for church planting. And they were 7 ingredients for success in a Michigan church. And then I looked at those same 7 things in Denver, which we haven't got to that yet, but our call ended up leading us to Denver, Colorado.
I'll say let's talk about Denver, because then if you want to go through the 7 things, because again, you've already introduced the topic. We've got past successes and leverage, like that doesn't necessarily leverage us into success in church planting. So past ministry successes. So yeah, you're fasting, praying, hearing God say church planting. Sounds like there was a little season of waiting on the, like, what do we do then, right?
There was, yeah. So there was a year of waiting. I ended up no longer being at our church, at Woodlawn Church. And so I got a job as a carpenter, and I built houses for a season, for almost about a year. And boy, it was a hard year, because I looked into every church planting organization under the sun, and the internet was pretty new back then. But I was Googling, and I was reaching out, and I was calling, and I was sending letters, and I was doing everything to get on somebody's radar for church planting. And all these doors just kept shutting. And I found some pretty awesome groups that I thought, oh man, they're doing exactly what I want to do. They want to carry the Great Commission, blah, 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 whatever. And then I would find that there was some kind of theological issue or whatever that disqualified me from working with them. And so I was really discouraged. I was the low man on the totem pole building new houses. So I nailed the base to the floor. So the floor base that goes around on your wall. I did that every day, and I was literally on my knees every day, and I was praying, God, get me out of here. I don't want to be here. I was just begging him, please, show me what you want me to do. You told me church planting. I said I would do it. Let's go. And I got this invitation to go to Denver to do a church. It was really wasn't a pure church plant, but it was a church replant. And basically, this pastor was in Denver for a while, had a congregation, and he wanted to become a church planter himself. So this is kind of how it went. He wanted to become a church planter and move to Florida and plant a church. And so this church or planting organization said, well, what are you going to do with your church? And he said, well, we'll just close it down, and your church in Denver, we'll just close it down and we'll move to Florida. And they said, you can't just close it down, So they said, well, why don't we just replant this church? this congregation. And so they contacted me, went out there for an interview, met with some people, and it was quite interesting because we got a tour of a building. They had like a little storefront, like a garage kind of
Okay.
warehouse storefront type of building, and had a food pantry, and it had a bus, and they thought, this is great because Dave did bus ministry in
Yeah.
Detroit. They pick up people on a bus. It seemed to be a fit for me because we had been working with the inner city in the inner city in Detroit, and so all that was great. Here's our people, and met some people, and then we went back to Michigan to pack up our stuff to move. And
this was it. We're going.
This is it. We're doing it. We packed our minivan full of stuff. We left everything else in our house. Packed it up, and went out to Denver. And we got there, and while we in the transition time, the pastor broke the lease on the building, and so the building was gone. And then he decided to take all the equipment for himself to Florida, and he set us up in a little community center, which was like a senior center in a pretty shady part of town. And so everything that I had thought that was going to happen didn't happen.
So you go down, you touring, they have a facility of some sort. They have a bus, and they have a food pantry. Like there's makings of outreach and ministry and all. So I'm coming down to replant, take over this.
Yeah.
But you're not replant. It's all gone.
It's all gone, except for the people.
Except for the people.
Yeah. And
so essentially it's not a replant. You actually had to start from scratch, it sounds like.
We did have to start from scratch. And we had a core group of people.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where I'll get into my church planting failures, missing ingredients in a little bit here, but it was rough, because it was everything we expected didn't happen, and so I'm one of those guys that's like, I make the best of everything. So okay, if this is what we're handed, this is what we're going to do. And so we came out here to
what was the demeanor of the people when you rolled back in? And I'm assuming
they were just devastated.
Man.
Yeah. They were just devastated. They felt like they'd been ripped off. They felt betrayed.
Did everyone that you had met, did they stick it with you? They stick it out with you though? I mean, did everyone?
Man, we had a team that did stick it out with us. And
praise God.
That was pretty amazing. Can we jump into these 7 things?
Yeah, run through this because I want to draw the contrast now.
All right.
You're seeing a lot of growth, people saved, churches growing, youth ministries exploding, and now we're in
Denver, and which I thought was really one of the most unreached places. And it is, but it isn't. Now that I live in Utah, I know that it's not even close to one of the unreached places. So any of you who think you're in an unreached place, man, come to Utah. Come to Utah for a day or so, and we'll set you straight. So in Michigan, I'm going to go back to my Michigan success. And I didn't really realize a lot of this until after we had moved on and done church planting, what really were the ingredients. But reflecting back on it, I had a great team. And this was an older church, so it had a lot of mature believers in it. And those people just got behind the vision to reach our community through children's ministry. So I had a great team. I used the John Maxwell's 21 Laws of Leadership, and we just went through it a chapter a month with our leadership team, and we put into practice every single chapter. We did what it said, and it was phenomenal. And it's part of the reason why we were able to get 1,000 kids to our VBS, is because this team really rose up, and they were mostly lay leaders, and a few of them I paid part-time eventually, but most of them were lay leaders. So team was huge. The next one was money. Because I was successful in our ministry budget kept growing. The church they saw the growth, they saw more kids coming. We ended up doing a building addition for our children's ministry. We bought some buses, and we're bringing kids in on buses. We ended up we had a dozen buses at one point, and we were picking up about 200 kids every Sunday morning, going through the neighborhoods of Detroit, picking up kids. So I was able to produce a huge VBS. And then it was just a church filled with generous people. And as the church grew, more money flowed towards our ministry. So I saw just the blessing of God there. But I was just one department. And so I just thought, well, money comes with success. So, okay, it follows. Good. Okay, that's good. Vision, I had a great commission vision to reach the kids of Detroit, man. That's what we wanted to do. And so I didn't skimp on our vision. I felt like through leadership development, we could really do it. We could really reach the city of Detroit for Jesus. Growth. So like I said, we were growing exponentially every year. We were growing. So growth was another ingredient of the success. And then this one here is people loved us. Like I did not deserve the kind of love and generosity that the people at Woodlawn Church gave. It was unbelievable. Like we've been given a car. Someone walks up to us with a box, a small box, and says, "Somebody told me to give this to you." And I open it up, and it's $5,000 cash. Just Pastor's Appreciation Day, we'd get like piles of thank you cards, and people at that church were just so generous and so kind towards the pastors and the leaders of the church. And so it really was like more love than I ever deserved.
Well, and it's one of those things, it's not like, I don't think any church planner gets into it for the accolades and the pats on the back, because those are, but it's nice when it is acknowledged in ministry that you're appreciated.
Yeah. And they did it overboard. They were just
awesome.
overboard.
Oh, that's awesome.
They were just overboard and celebrating. And then I put family, the church family. Not only were they generous, but they were like family to us.
Just relationally, you mean?
Just relationally.
Yeah.
And then this is the biggest one for me that I just assumed would kind of come with, but it didn't, was the covering of safety. We had a mature congregation, a senior pastor that let me run my ministry. We built an addition onto our church for our ministry, and I wasn't responsible for the bottom line as the children's director, right? I was not responsible for the bottom line. That was our lead pastor and our elders' responsibility for, the financial stuff. So If I go through each of those in my church planting experience, in my experience in Denver, it was just not as good, and sometimes just as bad. So,
Well, so
like,
okay, so as you prepare to contrast this, then you're
so
running
the
through these
contrast,
things. It's
yeah,
like things are going awesome.
awesome in Detroit. I mean, they couldn't be going better. Like, could not be going better.
So the assumption then, just for our listeners, as we're preparing, like the mistake is being like, hey, this is going so well here.
Yeah.
God's blessing so much here. I'm so
Yep.
loved here, so much opportunity here. It'll be the same way when I get to Denver as a church planter.
Absolutely. It's going to be
Okay.
100%.
Same thing, because I'm
is
successful already.
this is what ministry is. It was, you know, this is what ministry is.
This is it.
I mean,
it's always
what I
sunshine.
realized,
Okay.
yeah.
Run through. Okay, we'll contrast it for us because
So I'll go through the same list.
yeah.
The team. So I ended up with a team of just spiritually wounded people. They were wonderful people, but they were spiritually wounded. They had been abandoned by their shepherd, their pastor. They saw him do some shady things and get rid of all the investments that, you know, in the church, the building and the sound equipment, and they just felt like they were just abandoned. And so, even though they're great people, they were just wounded spiritually.
Yeah.
And so that was my team. I had a team full of wounded spiritual people. So that was not quite the same. Money, not only was my team spiritually broken, but they were broke. Everyone in the church was broke. They were all living paycheck to paycheck, or some of them were on government assistance. They were not in the position to give generously and give a flourishing offering at any time.
Yeah.
Now, I thought my church in Michigan would be our sending church. So I believed that, because they always called themselves a sending church, and we had a huge list of ministries that we supported and all this stuff, and we had supported church plants in the past. So I thought they'd be really excited about supporting us and financially, and that didn't happen.
Well, then
So,
I think we've talked about this
yeah,
in mine and Grayson's story. It's the same thing, right? We just
yep,
assume that our home church is going to be the biggest champion of what we're doing. And
yep,
man, I hate that happened to you too.
yeah. So I ended up getting a full-time job building airplanes, because
You
that's
went
what I learned about in
from
Bible
fixing
college.
the attaching the baseboards of these walls to the floor
So
to
now I'm
actually
building
building
airplanes.
airplanes.
I'm building airplanes. Yeah,
I hope there was some training and like
there
some
was
okay.
some training, and I learned a lot
Okay.
during that time. But we were manufacturing carbon fiber airplanes. It was pretty cool. But I won't go into that. So I had to do that to support my family. So I worked throughout the week. And then I had a Great Commission vision to reach Denver, but I was shocked at how many Christians did not have a Great Commission vision. The Christians that I met in Denver didn't really seem to care, didn't really seem to connect with the Great Commission, didn't and that was shocking to me, because
Yeah.
like, I just thought, well, that's what churches do, right? We carry out the Great Commission, right? We go and make disciples, and we reach out to our community, and we do all this
Do what
stuff. And
Jesus said to do. Yeah.
yeah, and so I had this vision, but for a lot of my team members, they were so broken, their lives were just, they were barely hanging on themselves, let alone trying to think about other people. And so my vision was strong, but I was not finding comrades in my vision.
Right. People weren't latching onto it.
And then growth. It's always what you need in church planting. You need growth. And I was really trying hard to grow the church. I was going door to door, handing out flyers. I was doing
Dude, I know it. I know it.
just about everything. I was, but we were in a real kind of shady part of town, and it wasn't really, even the corner was pretty notorious that we met on. So
Oh my goodness.
yeah, so we were kind of in a stuck place there. People loved us. That was the other category, and I would say that the people in Denver did love us, and we loved them, but our output was 100 times more than our output in Denver or in Detroit. Our output was, we were always in a hospital, we were always in a jail, we were always in a rehab center, we were always, just doing triage, spiritual triage sometimes.
Yeah.
And
That's
the
hard,
people
man.
of our church was just, we had to put out everything. We were, I'd sometimes get off work after a 12-hour shift making airplanes and be going to the hospital, so, to be with the family.
Yeah.
And so, so that was hard when it didn't seem like there was any boundaries on what kind of crisis could possibly happen in a small congregation.
Right.
And then family, like, we never really felt like we were part of a family. It was more like a part of a real dysfunctional family. Like everyone was in constant crisis, and
Oh,
but I have to say that we were there for each other, and we saw some really cool things happen in the end with it. And then the big one that I talked about, at Woodlawn Church, we had a covering of safety. Well, in our church plant, we had some denominational leaders, but basically their philosophy was give a church planter $15,000 for his first year, and if he's good, he'll establish a church in 1 year. And that was the philosophy of the church planting organization. And so
I think, man,
15,000.
there's several, I think, organizations that's the philosophy.
Yeah,
Just give
here's
them
your
some money.
$15,000.
You'll do it.
Good luck. And
Man.
man, so we didn't have, when we finally left, one of the denominational leaders said, "Who was your church planting coach anyway?" And I said, "You were." And he said, "I was? I didn't even know that." And so he was introduced to us as our church planting coach, but he never really did anything for us while we were there. And so, so without that covering of safety, we didn't have someone to help us build our finances,
Right.
build our leadership team, all that stuff. And so that was something that was really missing in our church plant.
Wow. So you've gone through these list of 7 things.
Yeah.
And you just vocational ministry experience, you're on staff at the church. All this is incredible.
Yep.
That did not translate to the same success as going into a church plant situation.
Right.
I think that's a common mistake. Like, oh, I've succeeded over here on a pastoral staff or in
youth
this
ministry.
yeah. So I must be able to go, and this, you just rattled through the context is widely different. And I think probably the skills and gifts, spiritual gifts necessary are diverse. It's different. It's not the
Yep.
same thing as coming into an established work where you're
Yep.
shepherding and this kind of stuff. This is insane. So, okay, that's bad, bro. I'm sorry. That was
Oh, well,
but how did that set you up? Because you were there for a little while. So like what are
I-
you learning in that process? And then how does that kind of play out a little bit? Because you're not
yeah,
in Denver now. You're here with me in Utah.
right.
No.
So in 2006, we made the transition to Utah. So we were only in Denver for a couple years, and it just basically came down to I was either going to have to be working overtime every day at the airplane hangar, or I was going to have to find another ministry job. That was pretty much it. The church couldn't afford to pay me a salary at all, and actually building airplanes was not a very lucrative job either. So it covered most of our expenses and gave us some health insurance, but it wasn't, we weren't thriving there as well.
Right.
So I found it was really interesting because there was a church in Michigan that planted a church in Salt Lake City around the same time that we went to Denver. So
Okay.
they went from Michigan to Salt Lake, and we went from Michigan to Denver. And so that church is called K2 the Church,
Yeah.
and they established in 2004. They planted the church, and they did everything right. So I don't know, you might ask Dave Nelson sometimes what he did wrong, but like it seemed like everything went
I
right.
mean,
This is a church that launched same time we launched in Denver. They launched, they had over 600 people there the first Sunday. Grew to about 800 people in about a year and a half. And that's when I came in to the picture. They hired me to be their children's director, and I was happy to go because we were broke. We were broke in Denver, and we really needed a fresh start. The thing that really attracted me to K2 was the fact that they wanted to be a church planting church, a church multiplying church.
right.
And it helped me kind of realize that this call to church planting back in Detroit, when I felt this call, you don't belong here, church planting, started to make sense as I was now coming onto the team of K2 and getting to hang out with church planters and getting kind of dream about church planting.
Yeah.
And it was quite a more safe environment with a full-time salary and everything. So I just began meeting with church planters. Dave Nelson, our lead pastor at K2, he started meeting with church planters. We'd have gatherings and get them together and just try to help them just sustain. We ended up starting a ministry called Loving Utah out of that. Logan serves on my board at Loving Utah, and we started that to help church planters survive, thrive, and multiply in the state of Utah. And oftentimes you're in survival mode for a long time in Utah, sometimes eternally in survival mode in church planting in Utah. So survive, thrive, and multiply. We're mentoring church planters. We do gatherings a couple times a year where we gather to pray together. Sometimes we gather to learn together. I get to network. So this is what I'm doing full time now. I've been doing this since 2017, full time with Loving Utah, and since 2011 is when we started it. And loving on these church planters and just caring for them, because a lot of times, with the exception of one denomination, almost every church planter comes here alone.
Right.
They have no denominational support inside the state. They're coming to Utah as kind of pioneers, and they're coming as pioneers for their denomination or their church sending group or whatever it is.
Yep.
And so we try to identify them as quickly as possible and build relationships with them. I'll call Logan if they're close to Logan. I'll say, hey, Logan, can you have coffee with this guy? Or do you know this person? Or did you hear about this church plant?
Good,
So
man.
we do that a lot because we really care. Because it's really hard to do it's really hard to plant a church, period. And it's really hard to plant a church in Utah. And so we wanted to come alongside and love and care for these church planters. In fact, I was on the phone call yesterday with a church planter who was a little discouraged, and tried to just encourage him and pray for him on the phone. And then there's another person who's trying to plant a new church just down the road from me, and so I'm meeting with him and trying to learn how I can help and serve him. So all this experience, the experience that I had, that my past success did not equate to my future success, really kind of, God just helped me to remember. And there's a quote from 1 Corinthians 15:58. It says, always give yourself fully to the work of the Lord, because you know that your labor is not in vain. And
Good.
that is an encouraging word I give to every church planter, because, man, we make mistakes. Okay, Logan, I went through last night in prep for this. I went through all the titles of all your church planter mistakes. Okay. And I calculated that at least 50% of them were mistakes that I made. So I get
It's common. It's kind
I
of.
get church planter PTSD every time I
Oh my
listen to one of your
gosh.
podcasts. But I love them. I love them all. But we all make mistakes. We try to do our best, and sometimes we look back and we see how foolish we were at a time in the past. And you know what? The word of God says that, remember that your labor for the Lord is not in vain. And so even when we're laboring on the stuff that probably isn't going to make as much impact as we think it's going to make, we're still laboring for the Lord, and he sees that, and it's not in vain. Because we never know, when we put on a goofy event or whatever, a heart that's touched, a life that's changed. So that scripture has been really helpful to me to remember, because I've done a lot of weird stuff in ministry. So
that's awesome. No, thank you for sharing that, brother. I appreciate that. That is encouraging. That is encouraging. I tell you what, as we kind of wind this down, let me ask a couple just real quick questions, and we'll be done here. You're with a lot of church planters now. I mean, you've been a church planter, but you're with a lot now. What is some bad advice you hear floating around in the church planting world?
One of the things I've noticed in church planting world here in Utah specifically, that I've noticed, is that churches go too quickly to their launch event and launching in the big room. I call it high production, low attendance. And so they have this core group of, like, let's just say 25, 30 people on their team, if they're lucky, right? They have a good core group. They're having barbecues together, loving on each other, meeting in homes, just enjoying life together, right? And then there's this pastor who's kind of stirring them up and saying, but we're going to reach our community. Right. And so to do that, we're going to have a launch service, and we're going to have to invite all these people in, and do all this, neighborhood parties, things like that, whatever, to draw attention to our church. And then what I've seen this happen over and over and over again, that those 30 people put on the launch service, and a whole bunch of well-wishers come. You know, people fly in from out of town, you know, denominational leaders might come in, your in-laws might come in, you know. I know here in Utah, like there's 4 or 5 of us pastors that usually show up to a new church launch. If we can be there, we're there. And so these 30 people turns into like 75, 80 people on the first launch day. And you're thinking, 80 people at our church, this is amazing, right? And you can fill a small gymnasium and it looks good and everything. And then the next week comes and you're back down to 30 people, and you might have picked up a couple, but now you're sitting 30 people in a gymnasium, and it can feel very empty and cavernous. And
I'm thinking of 3 or 4 that I know that's the situation I'm in right now here.
Yeah. And then here's what happens is, now that you have a full production church, you start doing things that you never did before, which is like VBS. Okay. You got to get that summer bump. So you do VBS, and then you got to get that spring bump. So you do Easter service, and then you do a winter bump. So you do the Christmas service. And now you have this,
you got to keep rolling. You got to keep going.
Got this group of 30 core people, that are now exhausted because they're running all these things. They went from like hanging out in a living room, eating snacks and doing Bible studies, to like serving in children's ministry, serving as setting up chairs, tearing down chairs, practicing for the band, and then Easter, Christmas, VBS, women's retreats, men's retreats, all this stuff starts happening. And you're sitting there on a Sunday morning just feeling defeated because there's 35 people there. So launching too early, I would say, is one of the.
I'm glad you said, because I feel like that's a drum several of these episodes have just hit, is slow down. And my own story, we moved and we were launching in a matter of like 3 months, and it was the dumbest, most deflating experience. Like, that's a good word, Dave. Well, okay, well, give us the flip side then. What's a good advice? Someone just getting started on this church planning journey. What's one piece of advice you've heard given to church planners? It's like, wow, that's really good advice, or that you personally would say, out of my experience, my observation, I would say this.
I listed a couple things. I would say first thing is Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. If God's called you to do this, trust Him.
Amen.
Trust that He's got the best for you. Give it your best. Figure out how to make disciples who make disciples. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff, and Logan, I know that you talk about this on some of your podcasts, and I don't want to get into it on this one, but figure out in your context how to make disciples that make disciples. I mean, I wish someone would have taught me that. And then Psalm 46:10 says to be still and know that He is God. That also reminds me that He's in control, that it's not about my numbers or my success or anything like that. And then just be faithful to the Great Commission. I just heard a church plant story of a new church plant in Idaho. This was a couple months ago. They had 500 people show up on their launch day, and all their leaders gathered afterwards, and they couldn't identify a single lost person that came to that service. So they had just the well-wishers and the Christians. 500 Christians show up for their launch service, and I would say it's probably because they didn't focus on the Great Commission going into their launch. They probably focused on getting their production team together and their children's team together and everything else. And but they actually repented of that right away. And they're like, oh, this is not what we wanted. We wanted to reach people, but we didn't focus on it. And so focusing on the Great Commission is a real is something I would say my advice is.
That's good, bro.
Yeah.
Really good. Well, let's close with this. I started this in this last episode. Do you have a favorite quote about failure or making mistakes or learning from failure, mistakes, anything like that kind of could close us out here?
That's a good question. I'm just going to go back to the 1 Corinthians 15 because that's where always give yourself fully to the Lord because you know that your labor is not in vain. That we'll fail all the time. I fail at things every day, and but God's grace is so much greater than our failures, and He uses the small things and the little things and the big things, and we just can't get wrapped up at that success is a number or that success is a certain pinnacle of place that we get to.
Yeah.
Right. We got to think about the successes we have every day, just in raising our kids. Sometimes we have successes and failures. But in our church planting ventures, man, you are going to fail. You're going to listen to some of these episodes and get PTSD like I did when I listened to Logan's podcast. But dude, I love it. I love every episode you've done. I am so grateful to be a part of this one. And if anyone would want to reach out to me, you could put my contact information in the show notes.
Absolutely.
For sure. I always like to meet new church planters and maybe somebody out there after listening to all these episodes is feeling a call to Utah, man. Contact Logan or contact me and we'll have a conversation. Right?
Yes, sir. Well, thank you so much, Dave, for hanging out. Again, I was joined by Dave Elshaug. He is sharing a church planting story from his work in Denver. He's now here in Utah with the director of Loving Utah, and I'll put all that contact info in the show notes. You can reach out to me directly if you've got questions, anecdotes, you're a church planner, you got a story, something like that. You can just email me. It's desk@crosspointutah.com. That'll be in the show notes as well. My name is Logan Wolf. I'm coming to you from my office in Provo, Utah. And this has been Everything I Did Wrong as a Church Planter, a 1,000,000-part series.